Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Winnipeg. Welcome, Manitoba. Welcome to the Kuya Noel and Tito Aldous show. This is Kuya Noel on cam, but behind the scene is our director, Aldous Guzman, your Tito Aldous. And it's Saturday night again. And we have round two for our leaders in the union sector. And we are so happy to have them again to discuss about very important issues that is, that are happening right now, which impact most of our workers in the government sector, in the public sector, and Winnipeg Transit as well. So welcome back, Romeo Ignacio and Michelle. Say hi to our audience, guys.
Hello, guys.
Hello.
Why don't you start up, Michelle? Greet our audience there.
I can. I just want to say thank you again for inviting me back. I'm thrilled and very honored to be invited back. And it is a great opportunity. And I am very, very proud to be able to speak on behalf of MGEU members as well as just labor members from across this province. So thank you very much for having me back.
Always a pleasure, ma'am. Go ahead, Romeo. Greet our friends out there.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I'm Romeo Ignacio, and this is my second time here. And I would like to thank Kuya Noel and Kuya Aldous for inviting me again. Happy to be here.
Nice. When I first met Romeo, I told him I am a regular bus rider, and I'm very proud of that. Actually, I miss my bus driver. I have this connection with my bus driver because I'm a regular rider, right? So he knows what time I ride the bus, and he knows where I get off the bus, and he actually knows where I work. So I miss that. I miss the community inside the bus because I believe that there's a community out there, right? So there's a sort of association within the bus riders, right? So let's talk about that. Yeah, go ahead, Romeo. Are you saying something?
I know Michelle because, well, Michelle, you can say you can tell that, but I knew Michelle because one of our operators is actually connected to Michelle.
Oh,
so Michelle could probably explain that.
Are you a bus rider too, Michelle?
I'm not a bus rider because I live out in rural Manitoba. I've never been fortunate. But my son-in-law, Steve, is actually a transit driver. So I'm always very much aware, and I watch constantly what does go on. And I know the challenges that Romeo and the other bus drivers have out there in trying just their safety alone. I very much recognize that.
Okay.
So that's 2 degrees of separation right there, right?
So before we continue on, many of us, maybe some of our viewers do not know MGEU and ATU. Again, just give us a very short background of MGEU and ATU. Go ahead, Michelle.
Well, MGEU, we are over 32,000 strong across the province of Manitoba. We represent over 11,000 civil service workers. There were more, but of course, this government has already done over 2,000 cuts out there in civil service. And we represent hospitals and care homes. We represent places like Impark, the Centennial Concert Hall, Manitoba Museum, AFM, Crown Corporation, so our liquor stores and MPI and all the rest of them. So I'm very, very proud to be their president.
All right. So ATU, Amalgamated Transit Union Local 1505, right, Romeo?
Yes.
Okay. So give us a short background of ATU, please. Thanks.
Yeah, we represent the members of, the employees of Winnipeg Transit and Winnipeg Transit Plus, AB Transit contractor.
Mm-hmm.
That's our new member or new bargaining unit, as well as the bargaining unit in Brandon. So there's about 1,500 union members in
strong union members. Nice, love it. Now I would like
not
to
as strong as MGEU though.
You are.
Yeah.
It's awesome to be in the same building and to be able to call Romeo brother. I'll tell you.
That is true.
I know. When I first interviewed Romeo, we actually did the interview in the building. So maybe after COVID-19, we'll go back there and chat about, other, issues and programs of union. All right.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And can't wait to have this COVID-19 over, right? So now, speaking of COVID-19, speaking of stress, I wanna ask you guys. I'm gonna read a statement, and I will not tell first who said this. And this leader said this in a statement, and he said, "Stay positive here. There's a lot of stress out there. Reassure people who are afraid." The leader said, "Don't add to it." And I'm going to ask Michelle, who said that?
And what is that leader doing today? He is cutting jobs and cutting the civil service, and he is causing more stress than any other premier in the province of Manitoba. I know exactly who you're talking about. March the 24th. That wonderful leader went out there when COVID began, and he has done nothing since but cause stress and heartache and anxiety for every Manitoban that walks in this province.
Now, contrary to that statement, that was actually a statement by Brian Pallister. That's right, March 24th, 2020. And however, contrary to that statement, the premier is now pushing public sector workers to accept RW, reduced working hours, right? Or face temporary layoffs. Michelle, I know. How do you feel about this?
I absolutely think it is the worst thing that could be happening to the province of Manitoba right now. We need to make sure that we've got people that are working in the private sector right now. There's a lot of folks that are laid off. The federal government is looking after them. I had asked our premier to top up that EI to make sure that those Manitobans had the best possible that they could, and at least top them up to 95% of their salary. He has refused to do that. And not only that, he has now come back and has gone after the civil service group, asking them to take 35 days leave without pay and the reduced work week. Or he is saying that he's going to lay off, and he wants me to be able to campaign and for the federal government to top up the civil service for EI, which is not, they can't do it. It's not law. The federal government cannot do it. So we know that that is not an option. And the premier has said that if I won't cooperate and the federal government will not cooperate with him, he is left with no choice but to lay off civil service. He says 25%. So that's 25% of 11,000 families that are going to be hurt. It is unbelievable to me, and nobody anywhere has said this is a good idea. In fact, even progressive conservatives are out there saying this is wrong. Businesses are saying this is wrong. He is going to hurt our economy to the point that Manitoba will never come back from. So I pray to God that he takes a look at this and actually pays attention to the economists and the folks that are out there, the professors that are saying to him, this is the wrong way to go. Do not lay people off. Keep the economy strong for all of us when this is done.
And can you tell us again how many possible families may be affected with this layoff? How many did you say?
Well, he has been quoted to say 25% is what he's looking at. So if you've got 11,000 people, that works out to about 3,200 people. That's 3,200 families. And how do we know that these people are not the sole breadwinner for their family, and perhaps their partners have been laid off already?
Yep.
So now it is hurting Manitobans to the point that it is unbelievable to me that he would even consider this. And is he using a pandemic to be able to get what he wanted, which was to cut the civil service? It's going to hurt the services for Manitobans. It is not going to help business. If I don't have a paycheck, I'm not spending it.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
People have those paychecks and they will go out and spend, and that will help the private sector too. I don't understand. It's not that complicated. It truly is not.
Now, let's talk about another, shall I say, Brian decision, but not the premier, the, but the mayor. Now, Winnipeg Transit will reduce bus service and lay off 253, if I'm not mistaken, full and part-time drivers because of the COVID-19 pandemic, of course. And this is a question for Romeo. Prior to the announcement, Romeo, by Mayor Bowman, was the union even informed? Or if not, what's your, how do you feel about this? What's the stand of the union on this decision?
Well, first, I'm just going to correct you. There's only, we all have full-time bus operators, and the one that you're talking about, probably you're referring to the bus operators in training. So they're not they're not permanent yet, but they're not part-time. So they're supposed to be full-time once they finish the training, but they're getting laid off as soon as they're done with the training. So basically, they will be able to get back to work with just a refresher when this is all over. So anyway, going back to your question, we knew that it's going to happen. We were informed of the contingency plan way back in end of March. We've been pushing back on that plan, the contingency plan, because we know it's not going to work. You could see a lot of buses that are probably, running with less people, but
or almost empty.
But and we asked for redeployment because we know that we don't have a lot of manpower. In order for you to practice social distancing, as it says in the signs, the front signs of the bus, we need to have extra buses to allow social distancing in the buses. And because they kept on going with the regular service, we weren't able to redeploy to where it's needed. So now they presented a different plan. The plan is to reduce service to Saturday and hand Saturday, which is basically half of the regular service for weekday. So to us, it's impossible to even comprehend how it's going to look like starting March 4th.
May 4th.
Or May 4th. Sorry.
Is that already finalized, or should it be? Will it be discussed in the council at least, or?
No, it's final. It's they can't exist without cutting the service, because 229 operators being cut is basically the entire spare operators that we have. Basically, if everything is running smoothly, we need spare operators to cover vacations, sick time, accidents. And that's the entire spare board. We have technically, we only have about 170 spare board operators. But they keep hiring more drivers. So, we get probably about, like right now, about I think 50 are supposed to be coming into the spare board. But anyway,
what do you mean spare board again, Romeo? Sorry.
The spare board is a group of operators that don't have regular work. They basically show up for work. If there's somebody who called in sick, they're given that work. Or they could be, if somebody's on vacation, they sign the work for the whole week. But they are full time. It's just that they don't have the regular crew that most everyone could sign.
And these are the ones. These are the ones who will be laid off, right?
Not necessarily, but the bottom 229 are the ones being laid off. It's by seniority. Although
Right.
we were also asking for voluntary layoff because of the fact that some of the more senior drivers have medical conditions that on the front line
Mm-hmm.
May not be good for them.
Okay.
With the COVID virus.
Mhm.
And so we were asking for voluntary layoff to be allowed on a without prejudice basis, just
Mhm.
because of the pandemic, and to assist some of our members who are more susceptible.
Yeah.
And that would also help out the more junior drivers that earning less, and maybe they just want to continue working. But yeah, and so far we have about 30 who have volunteered to be laid off.
Okay.
But yeah, to answer your question, I was informed Tuesday night at 11 o'clock p.m.
Mm-hmm.
That there's going to be layoffs starting Wednesday, basically April 22nd.
Uh-huh.
And
You can say.
yeah, I can.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That was the toughest night I've had.
Okay. I hear you. Yeah. Yeah. I'm because I'm also I would say I'm connected to Winnipeg transit drivers because I'm a bus rider. So I am particularly personally impacted by this decision. So I want to go back to Michelle because as also I'm a member of MGEU, although I'm now with a private company, but it used to be a government department. But we're still members of MGEU now. Uh, Give us an idea or background about Philmon's Friday, if you would remember that.
Oh, yes.
And if you can still recall that, what happened? What was the feedback, or how is this Philmon's Friday affected the government employees on the positive side or the negative side, or what was the outcome of this program during those times?
Well, if I may be so bold, I would just like to say to Romeo, my heart goes out to him. I know being the president and having your members get laid off and finding that out at such short notice, it is heartbreaking to hear that another president has been going through that, because I know he takes his members to heart. He thinks of each and every one of them. So my heart goes out to Romeo for that. Philman Friday in the 90s. Gary Philman was our premier at the time, and Brian Pallister was an MLA, a sitting MLA.
Uh-huh.
So they tried many things back then. They tried to privatize many things along the way. They tried to privatize home care, and we had a huge fight on our hands, and we won that fight, and they stopped the privatization of home care. They privatized our Manitoba telephone system. We lost that battle in the province, and they did privatize it. It's never been the same since, and now it doesn't even belong to Manitobans anymore. One of the things they brought in, they decentralized civil service workers. So they took the folks that were working in Winnipeg and sporadically placed them all around the rural Manitoba, forcing families to have to sell their homes, move out into the country, move out into the other areas. It was devastating for families. If you had a 2-family income and your spouse was working in Winnipeg with you, then suddenly you got moved to, say, Brandon, or you got moved to Swan River or the Paw, and you had to up and leave. It was devastating for folks. That was one of the ways that Gary Philman managed to start to curb and cut within civil service. And another way that they did it to save money, they said, was they mandatory forced people to take days off without pay. Wow. So it definitely cut. It was 20 days at that time back then. So that was essentially a pay cut. which
Mhm.
in what's happening today and what the premier is asking at 35 days, that equals a 15% cut in pay annually for every civil service worker out there. I don't understand the need for it. I don't understand the reasoning for it. And like Romeo, we have actually said to the civil government, to the civil service government,
Uh-huh.
look at redeployment. There's many areas where we could be moving people around. And in fact, we have signed a deal off with MPI exactly on that. We did it for casino workers in Winnipeg, as many as we could, and we had them redeployed to where they're doing COVID cleaning, as I call it, in the liquor stores. So there's places for Manitobans to work, and let's move and redeploy people there. If there is a bit of a work slowdown because of COVID in their department, then let's move them around. They could be providing spacing outside the stores. They could be getting on those buses and helping those bus drivers when you're looking at the social spacing that needs to be done. It's time to all work together, and it's time that the government understands that he can work together with all of us Manitobans to make us strong and get us through this pandemic. I don't understand how anyone could take a pandemic that is costing people their lives, that is putting frontline workers in hospitals and care homes and laboratories all over this province. Their lives are all at risk. They're at risk of taking home a disease to their families. So on top of all of that, this man now decides he's going to cut thousands of jobs across this province or cut their salaries at a time when they need the income the most. We need to make sure that our economy is strong. The only way to do that is to make sure people have money in their pocket to spend it. If you look at what the federal government is doing, they are making sure that Canadians are getting at the least amount that they can get, at least have an income to be able to support their families, keep a roof over their head, and keep the hydro on. And as long as the rest of us can do that, and if our premier in this province would help and do the same as every other premier across the country, we are the only province where the premier is considering doing cuts and cuts to positions, which is going to cut services, which is going to hurt all Manitobans. This isn't just about government workers, not by far. This is about the services that are going to be cut for every Manitoban out there.
Now, I would like to point out as well advocacy. What we're doing here is this is a public service program. At the same time, it's an advocacy service for all. And I remember one time when I interviewed Romeo, and after that I interviewed Jason Sanderson and Councillor Kevin Klein about an advocacy of UPass, because UPass was supposed to be eliminated by City Council, right? You remember that, Romeo? And because of our advocacy, they admitted that they had a mistake in doing that. And they finally reconsidered UPass, and now UPass has been, it's there. It was not eliminated because of the advocacy of, union members, community members, simple guys like us, Manitobans, little Manitobans, simple Manitobans. Advocacy works, right?
Yes.
Now, I would like to segue here on to a question for Romeo. You said earlier that this decision for layoffs might be a final decision already. However, let's say, for example, it's not yet final, and we will be allowed, because of our advocacy, we will be allowed to have it discussed or debated at City Council. Who do you think would be our, the city councilors who would be backing up this program, or letting us, or telling the mayor to reconsider this decision? Who would that be, do you think?
I think that it should all advocate for no layoff and no service reduction. Redeployment is always the only thing that we are pushing for, because at the end of the day, everyone you lay off won't be paying taxes.
Exactly.
There's no government that will survive without collecting taxes, and so you're basically paying people to stay at home when when these people want to work for a living, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How long can you sustain a country that will depend on the government to give them money? I don't think that's even possible. Whether it's coming from the federal government or from the provincial government, it's not sustainable. So
Yeah.
why wouldn't you allow people to work? Redeploy them. We are all in this together. I mean, the economy will not recover unless we all do something. I would like to stay at home and get paid, but at the end of the day, somebody has to pay the taxes, because with no taxes, there's not going to be any government services. There's not going to be any new roads that will be built. There's not going to be nobody to process your income tax returns, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of services in the government that need people to work, and a lot of Manitobans want to work.
Mm-hmm.
So don't take away the work for those people that want to work, because that's where the economy will recover, or that's how the economy will recover, by allowing people to work, and hopefully after this COVID, the sooner it's over, the better we could recover economically.
Mm-hmm.
And with all the people being laid off, how are you gonna recover faster, right?
Yeah.
That's just, I think it's very simple. As long as we protect each other, we have that social distancing. I know it's working, because we're not getting a lot of new cases.
Yeah,
The
we're
borders
getting there.
are still closed, right?
We're flattening the curve.
We're flattening the curve. So, and even the province announced that they will slowly open the restrictions, right? So to reduce the service at this point is actually it's probably it is not the best idea.
That's right. So thank you, Romy. I'm getting a warning here from Zoom, because we're using only a free subscription, so we got 5 minutes to go. So I'm gonna give the floor to the mic to Michelle. Your message to all Manitobans out there. Go ahead, ma'am.
The message this time around is the same as last time. Please, folks, stay safe, stay at home, love each other enough to stay apart, and get hold of your MLA, get hold of your city council, get hold of the premier, and tell them the best way to keep Manitoba alive is to keep us all working. Put us to work. Let us help each other, and we will stay strong. And I thank you so much for your advocacy. You're right. Without the advocacy, it will not happen. So very, very much appreciate.
Yes, ma'am.
Take
Thank you
care,
very much, Michelle.
Stay safe.
All right, thank you. And how about you, Romy? Last message to all Manitobans out there, especially to the members of ATU Local 1505. Go ahead, sir.
Please support our frontline workers, our government workers, and we're all in here together. We can all come out of this stronger, but we need your support. We need support for our working people, our labor. And I thank you, Kuya Noel, for your advocacy.
Thank you very much, guys. And before we end the show, just to let you know, guys, to all our audience out there, we actually invited Minister of Finance Minister Scott Fielding, to be interviewed, to be part of this show, and I'm just waiting for their response from the office, and hopefully, we'll have a chance to chat with him and explain about the fiscal management of the province. All right. So
I've got questions for you to ask him.
There you go. I will let you know once I get a response from our good friend, the Finance Minister Scott Fielding, who was a former city councilor.
Yes, he was.
So yeah, so both levels of government. So again, thank you very much, guys. Thank you, Romeo, and thank you, Michelle, for gracing our program again. And all the best to you guys. And to all of our audience, thank you for watching. This is Kuya Noel of the Kuya Noel and Tito Aldo Show.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.